Now we're going to take these equations and inequalities that we've been solving and use them to solve word problems. So now we're going to have to write our own equations and inequalities. So for example 1, Keith has $500 in a savings account at the beginning of the summer. He wants to have at least $200 in the account by the end of summer. He withdraws $25 a week for food, clothes, and movie tickets. So I want to write an inequality that represents Keith's situation. I want to know how many weeks Keith can withdraw money from his account. All right, so a couple of things. The fact that I see at least, all right, this at least tells me, oops, lost my pen. All right, this at least tells me this is going to be an inequality, and that is so crooked. But at least 200 means I don't want it to equal 200. I want there to be at least 200 in its account. So that could be 201, 300, or anything over 200. So it's going to be an inequality. All right? So $25 each week is kind of like saying $25 per week, right? And per is multiplying. So if he starts with 500, the amount of money he's going to have in his account is depending on how many weeks he pulls out $25. So I'm taking out, so I'm going to subtract $25 per week. Okay, so I've got his initial 500 minus $25 per week, and I want that to be at least $200. So at least means 200 and above. So it's going to be greater than, and it can also be 200. 200 is included in at least, so that's where my or equal to comes into 200. So I have 500 minus 25x is greater than or equal to 200. Now I want to know how many weeks can Keith withdraw money from his account. So I want to figure out what x works in this equation. All right, so I'm going to rewrite it down here. So I got 500 minus 25x is greater than or equal to 200. Solve for x. First thing I got to get rid of is 500. So I'm going to subtract 500 from both sides. So I've got a negative 25x is greater than or equal to negative 300. Okay, I got to get rid of the negative 25, so I'm going to divide. Now pay attention, if you divide or multiply by a negative, you got to flip your sign. So then it becomes x is less than or equal to, and 300 divided by 25 is 12. Alright, so any x's that are less than or equal to 12 will work for this equation or for this inequality. So that'll keep him at least $200 in his account. So the maximum number of weeks that he can withdraw money is 12 weeks to keep his account above 200. Example 2, Yellow Cab Taxi charges a $1.75 flat rate in addition to 65 cents per mile. Katie has no more than $10 to spend on a ride. I want to write an inequality that represents Katie's situation. I want to know how many miles she can travel without exceeding her limit. All right. Again, it's an inequality because of this no more than. Okay, so that no more than tells me that $10 is the maximum that she can spend. Okay, so it's got to be less than 10. All right, now a flat rate means that no matter how many miles you go, you're going to get charged $175. So I'm going to do $175 plus whatever the mileage is. Okay, so it's 65 cents per mile. That per means multiply. So I've got plus 0.65x. And remember, 10 is the maximum. So 10's got to be the biggest, which means this has to be less than or equal to 10. All right. Then I want to know how many miles she could go that would still let her stay within her $10 budget. So I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 175. So I've got 0.65x is less than or equal to 8.25, and then just divide by 0.65. Alright, so if we round, we've got to the hundredths, got 12.69 miles. Alright, and we don't really want to round up because that might put her over the $10 limit. So if anything, you'd round down, but this one rounds nicely. So we have 12.69 miles. In our last example, example 3, I've got Glenna who is wanting to rent a car for a trip to Key West for 1 week. She calls 2 rental companies to get prices. Mr. Cotter's Rentals rents a Cadillac Escalade, she's getting fancy for this trip, for $99 for 1 week plus 11 cents per mile. And there should be a dollar sign in there. That's bad typing. Okay, per mile over 100 miles. Barbarino's Rentals has the same vehicle for $75 per week and 15 cents per mile over 150. If it's 432 miles to Key West, which company has a better deal? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is write 2 equations, one for Mr. Cotter and one for Barbarino's. Okay, so for Mr. Cotter, I'm going to say K equals, right? His flat rate is 99, so no matter what, you're paying the 99 plus whatever the mileage is, right? And his is 0.11 per mile over 100 miles. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I got 99 plus 0.11x. All right, and we're going to keep in mind that this is over 100 miles because it's a little different for Barbarino's. All right, so then for Barbarino's, we have B equals, her flat rate, or their flat rate is 75 plus 0.15 per mile over 150. All right, so we're going to make note here that theirs is over 150 miles. All right, now, if you think about it, she's going to Key West and she's renting this car. Well, she's got to come back. Okay, so it's not just going to be 432 miles. Her total trip is going to be 864 miles. Okay, so that's what we got to use to plug in. Your answer will be different if you plugged in 432. All right, because it would make one look better than the other, but for the total trip, a different one actually turns up as a better price. All right, so all I'm going to do is plug in 864. All right, well, almost plug it in. Okay, remember, this is 0.11 over 100. All right, so I'm not going to plug in 864 to this one for Mr. Cotter's. I'm going to plug in 764 because that first 100 miles is free. So she's only got 764 that she's got to worry about. So plugged all this into the calculator, and Mr. Cotter's ends up being $183.04 for a whole week to drive that Escalade. All right? For Barbarino's. Okay, again, I'm not going to plug in 864 because the first 150 for her are free. So I'm going to plug in 864 minus 150, which is 714. All right, so I've got 75 plus 0.15 times 714. Okay, plug all that into the calculator, and Barbarino's ends up being 257.10. Okay, so we got 183 versus 257. Okay, so Mr. Cotter's is going to be the better deal. Okay, if you did this where you had plugged in 432, because the mileage was less, Barbarino's ends up being the better deal because the first 150 are free. So you go farther for free, but then over time, Mr. Cotter's works out to be the better deal.